So I'm Michael Romanyshyn, and I'm here in Rotterdam with the All-Star Refugee Band, which is a project, it's a community project of the ICAF Theater in Prague. And it's been going, this particular project is 3 years old now, but it comes out of another project that started 7 years ago, working in the refugee camps with asylum seekers that had landed in Czech Republic. And one of the interesting, just little side things about this is that a great many of the refugees in the Czech Republic are there by accident. Like the singer in our band, who's Kurdish, they didn't want to go to the Czech Republic. They never even heard of the Czech Republic. They wanted to go to Germany or Belgium or the United States. But they hire somebody, that they give them a lot of money, and then that person finds a cheaper way to get rid of them. So they somehow end up in the Czech Republic. So there's a lot of accidental refugees there. But to the issue of just talking about how music can be a bridge to maybe confronting like the big cultural clashes that exist between host communities and refugee population. I take a lot of inspiration from my puppetry background in the Bread and Puppet Theater when the Bread and Puppet started in the 1960s, and it began doing a lot of very political shows about the war in Vietnam, and doing them as basically as puppet shows or cantastorias with painted banners. They would perform in like GI military cafes and to really hostile groups. And it was pretty interesting that that was before my time, but that because the means of presentation was visual, that people were not as apt to be offended by the message, even though they would disagree with it. So the reaction was I've never heard really of a violent reaction to a play that people may be violently opposed, personally or politically. So I think of music as the same way, that you can say things to people with music that you wouldn't be able to say in a speech. I mean, you couldn't walk into a room and say to people, you are basically a racist population, and you got to change your ways. I mean, you couldn't say anything very blatantly offensive, but with music you can make a song about maybe not saying it in those words, but the combination of music, I think, hits people in an unexpected way. Just to get the puppetry and correlation with puppetry, I know, for instance, that during the Franco period in Spain, there were puppet groups that existed and did really, quite strong pieces about the military, but because they were with puppets, they were able to survive, whereas like dramatic theater, making any kind of denunciation of the military or the dictatorship would have been and were thrown in jail. And you go through history, and it's true that puppeteers always were like kind of on the outside of the law, getting away with things. And I think music definitely can do that, and you see it. I mean, it also has to do with sometimes there's lots of popular musicians that say things that politicians can't get away with. Not because they're popular, that's something different. But I think music really speaks to people in a way that is different than language. It's somewhere where we can find a common ground, and oftentimes language is really divisive and puts people in different camps, and they immediately identify you as you're part of that group which I don't agree with, so I'm not even going to listen to you. But with music, okay, there's maybe a way that you can communicate. And so that's where I think, yes, a song or has a way, and then of maybe allowing people to listen to a message. But then just visually, like with our band, it's a mixed band. There's Asian, there's an Arabic background. We could even have more diversity, but hopefully we will. But people see it, and they hear the languages, they hear the accents, and it's new, it's kind of fresh for them.
Something else that struck me when I was doing research on your work is the idea of having a tone, or a melody, for instance, where you have one melody and then that is you build a whole, let's say, a composition based on that one strand.
Yeah.
Is that a way to bring unity as well? Is there a reason why you do that, or is it something that just came onto you? Can you explain more on that?
Well, I kind of think melody can be medicinal and healing, and I take it from. I mean, I'm not really a scholar, but I know that in the old Hasidic traditions, that I kind of get a lot of musical inspiration from the Eastern European traditions, that specific melodies were used for healing. Mm-hmm. And I just know that from my own personal experience, mm-hmm. that melody can be a medicinal tool. So I think I just kind of like melody's the kind of thing that comes to me very easily, and I sort of grab on it. So it's just one of the things that I'm able to use. Mm-hmm. But I think that it works on different levels. Like I think it can convey what you want to say in a way that you can't say it. Mm-hmm. So I that's why I kind of use melody a lot.
Something that is, for instance, being at this festival brings into light the issues of publicness, the issues of, not publicity is not the word, but publicness, bringing things out which are, and from the seminar there was a comment about how you're taking work out of its context and bringing it to a larger platform where people are able to see it. In terms of your work, in terms of music and the communities you're working with, is there a drive to try to take this music out of its locale and present it to a bigger platform, and by doing that, in a way, inadvertently, you create a bigger community that is experiencing that process of healing? Mm-hmm. Is that part of the agenda, or is it something that you feel, well, let's just create music for this small locale and that's fine, or is it the part of trying to take it out to a bigger platform creates a process of healing? Would you explain more on that?
Yeah, I think we have a big idea to want to really, take it out. And it's also like in our music creation, we're trying to do something that doesn't have it's not world music. It's trying to be what we can create it's quite dependent on the people who are in the group. It doesn't have an idea that, we'll take tango and put an electro swing beat to it, or we'll take, this traditional music and put a different beat to it. But sometimes it does come out sounding like that. But it isn't really our idea. Our idea is to do something contemporary that has resonance with the people in the band in their own situation. So they may come from, North Africa or Latin America or somewhere with some musical tradition. But then they land in Prague, and they're in a different reality. So what's the music for that reality? And what makes sense for that? I mean, if we would just play traditional samba from Brazil, sure, people like samba, and they listen to it and they get something from it, but it doesn't really express the reality of a Brazilian in Prague. It's only that Brazilian's playing samba in Prague. But what if he makes music, or she makes music with a Prague musician whose background is something different? That may be. And also, what's the reality of living in Prague? It's not, samba isn't part of Prague, but yet he's in Prague as a samba player, so it is. So there is that. I mean, I think the combinations are important to express the current reality. But then I feel that we're all experiencing something quite similar now, because the whole world is in transition. I mean, we're basically, we're not all refugees in the strict sense, but we are kind of, virtual refugees. Exactly. And, we could very easily be. We have one song that called. We didn't sing it last night, but it's called the Refugee Blues. But it says, you know, if you're luckier than me, remember what luck can be. Because one day you get a call, and what fits in your bag is all. I mean, we all could. You don't know. I mean, look at what just happened in Japan. I mean, you never know what's going to happen, and so that's something. But on the other hand, we're living in a finite world where the resources are diminishing, and we really have to recognize that, especially those of us from the wealthiest countries, that we have an unfair control of the resources. So when the refugee migration has so much to do with the
inequalities and differences between the have-nots and the haves,
and how the distribution is.
Yeah.
And I really feel strongly that there are only two alternatives: that we either learn how to live in a world where we have much more integration, but also sharing of resources, or we're going to really turn into a war, more and more war, because it'll be wars of protecting water and protecting the oil. I mean, we're in it now. You look at all the wars. We have 3 wars America's involved in right now. So it's in this way there is a common language, and even if the music doesn't specifically speak to everybody in the world, the idea that let's make a language that we can all communicate in, and I think it's developing that way. That's how I see it.